Is just thinking, where can I raise the vibration, at least in myself and maybe in my community? We can support one another. I always say the answers are in the conversation.
And I think that's the revolution I want to see, is that more of us who are the ripples from this larger, horrible experience, say, no, we're not going to polarize and fracture and fragment and fall apart and self annihilate because we have lost our connection as a community. We're not going to do that. We've learned our lesson. These horrible unconscious leaders can do it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to let that happen to me again.
We made a decision in the group last Friday to not take sides on the Middle East issues. In the feminine consciousness that is really inclusive. It's like, the symbol of the womb, the inclusiveness of being in the womb, that kind of nurturing space. And also respect for divergency. So, for example, when the COVID vaccine story came up loud in the news, I mean, it was very controversial and very polarizing, and people were very upset. If you didn't get a vaccine, how could you be doing this to other people? You might be exposing people to blah, 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 blah. We really actually said, you are in charge to each other. You are in charge of your body, and you know what you feel right about, what's right for you. And it was really an amazing communication process, which is what you're talking about, the how we communicate about things is a big influence on the result. But people worshiping some form of the divine. And I don't know, if you want to call it infinite intelligence or love or God or whatever the name is. So I look at that side of humanity right here, in our room right here, and acknowledge to me that you and I, all of us, have these deep ancestral raging wars against, because we all come from some tribes, some peoples, and those peoples waged wars. And we also have love.
The things I've been holding are kind of like work related and modern life related, but they also, I think, really connect to my family and my experiences that have come before me, and sort of the blood memory that I carry of these horrific things that Native American people have experienced, and kind of how I'm connected to that. And that's always been a challenging thing to hold all my life. But I think that kind of from my recent experiences and then seeing the headlines, I'm seeing the horrific side that these children are facing on a daily basis that will then impact their lives for generations and their grandchildren. And, I'm a bit emotional. I hope that's all right. But it's just so hard to see that, like, even in the ways that in this modern world I've achieved so much material success, I feel like I'm still reconciling all of this pain that's like been transmitted in my blood. And I am seeing that a lot of the healing that I need to do for my own wellness is something that I hope can bring wellness to others through the benefit of community. And so I reached out to Lars because I've been looking for some resources, and I know he's pretty well connected and takes this work very seriously. And so I'm happy to be here and listen in. And I can share that the hour before I signed on here, I was listening to your Empower Hour on YouTube from the most recent one. And it was really helpful for me to kind of get a sense of a level of connection and the energy and conversation.
I'm feeling some emotion with you, and I think it brings up some of my emotion about this whole situation that also feels overwhelming. But that alone, I think, is an important thing for us to find and bring to one another in a space like this. I think more tears would be useful in this kind of unbelievable, monotonous atrocity that is part of human nature. Because we also see that there's also an immense capacity for love that Arden also touched on.
I'm Natasha, and I'm going to say something really off-putting. It just kind of works. Just disclaimer, I guess. I kind of like that we are able to see everything that's going on. So I think this young lady, Miss Arden, spoke to it earlier. She's like, you have to go look for this information. You have to find it. It's almost like it's secret and like something that we should never know about. But to blatantly have things in our face these days, it's almost like we can have a better understanding and that we can teach our children a more realistic version of what's happening. So there's no way that you can wash it out to say that it didn't happen. Like, we're just now have a front row view to it. Like, you can't hide what you're doing anymore. Now we can see it and we can hold you accountable to it. So I'm very much excited about these sort of a talks because we're all seeing things in a different way. And I think for me personally, I feel like peace and understanding comes from hearing everyone else's version of it to see it the way that it's really happening. And I think that's always the way that we move forward in everything. But for me personally, my personal stake in this is just I'm trying to understand every day that I come from a place of privilege. You know, I grew up safe. I grew up loved. I grew up without having to be torn apart from war on my doorstep. And I can't say that from people that I know and I've met recently. Like they've never had the same sort of life that I've had. And so now I think what I'm trying to do is bridge this gap to say, I understand what you're going through, even if I never had to experience it. I'm still trying to hold the space for you to work through what you have to work through so that we can find a way to come together on it. I know what peace feels like. I know what love feels like. So even when I'm going through all of these things and when all of these things are happening to me, I can come back to that because I know what it's like. But I know that there are people who've never felt safe within themselves. And so I can't take advantage of what I have. Instead, I have to try to find a way to teach that, to try to share that with the world so that they can find it with themselves.
I'm sure you're going to do it, because people are drawn to people who have peace and love. They're drawn. It's like a magnet. Can't help it,
Let's just take a moment. We didn't start this way, and I just thought of this to let there be a moment of reflection at this point. I feel already a lot of rich energy talking about plugging into something. I feel plugged in with all of you. And yeah, so if you all wouldn't mind just establishing a feeling of connection to whatever part of your body is connecting to the ground or a chair or a seat. Feel that connection, and then whatever part of you feels to be lifting upwards, reaching upwards. Imagine those energies are flowing, grounding, upward connection simultaneously working, and then there's awareness of the flow of breath. We can take a moment to honor and appreciate all the ways that we are each similar, the way that we are supported and sustained by the inhale-exhale breath, the way that we are connecting to the ground. Simultaneously, we have many differences. What has us have the capacity to be able to reflect on that, to make space for that, Take just a few more seconds pondering and reflecting. Is it yours, or is it the one who's fighting to keep the land? Does that make sense? No.
Sort of.
I'm trying to explain. Maybe I have a picture. So talk
But
amongst yourselves.
I'd say that the slavery or the lack of liberation is the ownership of the land, and that the land should not be owned, and that there should not be borders, right? Like, I watched this documentary week before last. It was kind of cosmic timing because it was about the American bison, and it was from Ken Burns. Highly recommend it. But it was about how the bison that roamed North America have slowly, kind of very parallel to the human stories as well, but how the ownership of the land really led to the loss of habitat and almost the decimation of the bison. And you really just have to look at the relationship that we have with our land and then see how that kind of extends itself to our relationship with each other. Because what we see, especially case in the Middle East, is that the sense of ownership of the land and inherent things on this is generational and entitlement and, like our holy, there's a religious element and political stuff. And so it really becomes like this warfare over control over the land that then ripples into damage done to communities and families and cultures and societies. But I guess I would say that until we can kind of liberate ourselves from owning the land, we're going to be stuck in the slavery of the capital system that says like the land is like the power, the land and the ownership of the land is how you gain your power. And so sorry to kind of jump in and pick apart what you were saying there about liberation and about, this, but I just totally got that connection to the land because I kind of feel like, and one of the takeaways from the Ken Burns, and I'll try not to give too much away, is that a bison is not a cow. You can't domesticate it. It is a wild animal that roams in vast landscapes, and you can kind of barbed wire it in, but it's still going to be a bison. And I guess I feel like that's kind of true for humans in the modern world, is we're humans and not cattle, and that we really need to kind of think differently about how we have a connection to the land, because this ownership model and the borders that it comes with, look at the migration problems and the inequalities and the exploitation that come with just by saying this land on this side is mine and that land on your side is yours, and don't cross that border or that boundary.
Bit about this is just our education system. And I see it a complete restructuring of what people are taught when they start in age 4 or 5 years old. But what's already happening, we're already teaching kids about separation lines. We're already teaching kids about, I think there's healthy boundaries. That's one thing that I wasn't taught. So that would have been nice, because there was another kind of merging of emotional confluence.
Yeah.
So that's important. But in terms of being able to understand how we are all a beautiful ecosystem, I don't feel like we learn that. We're learning more mechanistic things for a world that doesn't really serve us in the end. So,
and then the other figure in the room is the social media companies and the AI who's learning. As I've said, this is one of my pet freakouts, is that the AI is learning us and they're organizing around how we are responding to everything.
I do feel like I'm at least taking responsibility as an individual to not add poison into the world.
Yeah.
Not add, because I have that capacity. I do. I could be, volatile and screaming at people, but I choose to do a less toxic process, more loving, more gentle, knowing that it reaches someone somewhere and does some good somehow. Not overly ambitious, by the way. Just a little bit will help.
It's major when you look at the other side of the equation, how just how much we can tear each other apart when we're not paying attention to when I'm not paying attention to how I'm interfacing with these threads.
And that takes some kind of